Welcome to Mastering CS Candy Leader Insights, the podcast where we dive into the world of customer success with industry leaders. I'm your host, Irina Cismas, and today I'm joined by Hana Gruzman, CS Operations and Enablement Lead at Agora, a real estate investment management platform that helps firms manage investor relationships, fundraising, and reporting in one centralized system. Hana, I'm really happy to have you here. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
You've moved from CSM to team lead and now into CSOps at Agora. When someone asks you, what do you do today? What do you usually tell them?
It's hard to explain because my title has a lot of words that most people don't understand what it means. But basically, I build the processes that we do in the department, like how CSM should work, where they manage all their work, how they should interact with customers. And also, I'm in charge of enablement. So I need to know everything in the product really well and then basically teach all the CSMs the product. And also now I have a a solution engineer that I work with. So basically the more complex, like our system's quite complex. There's a lot of calculations, financial things. So the more complex use cases we help solve. So basically the processes and the product to know on a really high level.
And when you first stepped into the CS Ops part, what was the first problem that jumped out of you?
So the main thing that I try to solve, and to this day, is around efficiency and basically helping the CSM as the company grows. Also, because of AI and stuff, everyone expects you to be more efficient. So I basically try to see what takes up the most of their time and how to help that. So the first thing I did in the role, for example, was we have a certain type of customer that's quite small that uses only one part of the system. So we moved that to be under support. So things like that, to see how you can look at the people that work, what's taking up most of their time, and how you can help them be more efficient. And obviously still keeping them at a good level, making sure that they do their work, but to always try to become more efficient as a department while still holding up the adoption and helping the clients and the regular things that CSMs need to do.
And as the team grows and everyone somehow starts to work differently, when do you realize that? What point did you realize that you needed more structure in the CS team? What
Yeah,
was the point?
that's a great question. When I started, there were only 4 people. So we were 4 CSMs, and now there's over 30 people in the department, which is crazy. And
Kudos.
getting everyone to work in the same way is difficult because everyone, has the way that they like to manage tasks and the way that they write emails. So when I first stepped into the role and we started getting like batches of new employees that we needed to train, that's when we realized, okay, we need to do something more structured. They all need to work in a certain way on Monday. So I would say when I started in the role and we started going from 12 people, when we went to 20 plus, we realized we need like more structured processes and for everyone to be doing the same thing and not what they think. Obviously, we very much trust the employees and that everyone knows how to work in the best way and whatever works for them. But still, as you said, people need to work in the same way. And we have 2 different teams. And we need to make sure that each team, one in New York and one in Tel Aviv, that each team works in the same way.
And what were the first processes that you established and you put in place while the team was growing? And now I'm curious, not sure if you recall, but when you moved from or when you scaled from 4, 5 to up to 10, I assume that some processes were important. When you moved from 10 to 20 other ones, where the processes developed as the team was growing, what did you start with initially?
Yeah. So what we realized is basically that when we started as 4 CSMs, we were doing everything. We were doing onboarding, support, and CSM. And then we realized that we need to make mini departments in our CS department that focus on each thing. And it really worked. Like when we focused on something and we put people, that's their role, it got better. So for example, the first thing we did was split onboarding and CS. So like when I was in CSM, I was doing everything, spreadsheets, and everything was like, I was just guessing. So we built an onboarding department that focused on onboarding. We brought onboarding specialists that have different skills than CSMs. They're more detail oriented. They're good in Excel. They're more data driven, whereas CSMs is more like relationship upsells. Once you start doing that split, it also changes the people that you bring to the team. So we built an onboarding team. And then we did the same thing with support. So CSMs, as I said, like around efficiency, CSMs would spend a lot of time just answering like how-to tickets and just regular questions. So we built a support team. So everything we focus. We also have additional services other than the SaaS. We have tax and bookkeeping services. So also there's a team that works only on tax and bookkeeping. So when you have something that A, takes up a lot of time, B, needs a different like set of skills, I would say. So we saw that just building it out as different group in the department really helps. So those are the processes, and then how they all work together. So how does onboarding work with CS? How does support work with CS? Now, as I said, we have a solution engineer that comes in for more complex use cases, like the process of how he works with the CSMs and supports them. So basically, as you grow, you do need to split out, but still make sure that everyone knows how they work well with each other.
Let's talk also about some metrics. When you look at CS through the operational lens, what metric turned out to be misleading or not as helpful as people thought initially? What did you start with when you first put the structure in place? What did you first track, and how did the tracking system evolve while the team was scaling?
So one of the first things we realized we need to track is like a health score. So we built a health score based on usage. So we use a mix panel. We can basically see the usage of the clients, and we build like a formula based on what we think is good usage, if they use the waterfalls or reporting or features that we feel really keep people in the system. And then there's a score from 1 to 100, which is very easy to understand. Now, of course, you need to track the score, so you need to see if people are actually using the system, but it doesn't always predict if people are going to churn or not, because someone could be using the system because they're dependent on it, but they don't like specific features, or they want to leave, or they're very unhappy. So I would say you can't always rely only on data and numbers. You need like the human element. So we also have something called the pulse, which is the CSM updates based on what they think. So someone could have 100 health score, but their pulse is like very risky because they've expressed frustration, they want to leave, or whatever it may be. So I would say those are metrics that are important to have, but you always need to look at the human element. Like numbers can only tell you so much. So the CSMs in the end know their clients the best, and they can really predict. Like when we look back at the churns, we really saw that the prediction of the churns is based more on the pulse and not on the health score. Someone with 100 health score can still churn. So those are some of the things that we look at. And also upsells. Upsells, as the company grows, you can't only sell to new clients, you need to also upsell within your own client base. So that's something also that a skill that we've been developing, and something that we need to monitor and make sure that as a company grows, can't only grow from outside business, but also inside business.
You know what? I'm curious. CS team often, where I see this trend, that CS teams often respond to problems with adding more tools. What's the moment where you realized that tool wouldn't solve the issue? Or how did you approach the tooling part when you started basically adding structure in place?
Yeah, that's a good question. We definitely always get approached and emailed about new tools, and people want to add new tools. I think, first of all, what we're realizing now also with like AI, there's so much data that's being underutilized. For example, Avoma has an AI feature called Ask Avoma, which we recently started using. And it basically has all the transcripts of all the history with the client, even from the sales, even before they became clients. So I would say before looking at like outside tools, like we have so much data inside the system that we're not using because nobody knows how to approach it. So I think I know AI is just like a buzzword, and I also don't really believe in something until I can see that it actually gives me like a good solution. So I think using data that you already have inside, you just need that person to be like, hey, we have all this data about, so for example, what we did with AI, we had churns, all the churns of January. We put them into Claude, and we asked them to do a really thorough analysis of why people churned, what are the main reasons, and to see if we could predict it using the pulse and the health score. And then we looked at the current risk companies, and we were like, okay, based on past experience. So again, using data that we already have. So based on past experience, can we predict really whether these clients will churn? What can we do to prevent it? We realized there were some issues with the onboarding that maybe could be improved in order to learn from it. So I think utilizing data that you already have, using AI tools, and then, if something is missing and you actually need more tools, then you can look outside and see, okay, what tool can help me solve this problem?
So how do you now test whether a problem needs a tool or a process change? How do you know?
And I think, first of all, if it's like reoccurring, So, if we have one person that's always doing the same mistake and always, when you see that things are reoccurring, then you know that maybe it has to do with the people not understanding what they need to do. Like we had this whole process on HubSpot to do upsells, and everyone suffered from it and they did everything wrong. And that's when we were like, okay, listen, this process is not working. Everyone's complaining about it. So I would say if it's like reoccurring with one person or it's like the whole team, then something in the process doesn't make sense. And I would say you need a tool when you don't have access. Like I would say a lot of my job is to make everything accessible for the CSMs. Like I want them to have everything as easy and within reach that they need. If they have like tasks from the product team or people ask them questions, I want to make everything accessible to them. So if I can't make something accessible, then maybe I need a tool. But if everything is accessible, but they're still doing it wrong, then there's an issue with the process.
I want to know more about the enablement part of your role. Tell me, what does it actually mean and how do you use it? Because enablement means different things in different organizations. What does it mean for Agora?
Yeah, so in Agora specifically, enablement means just having knowledge. Our product is very complex. Has a lot of domains like reporting, waterfall calculations, distributions, and managing investors, managing entities. So there's just like a lot of things that you need to know. There's a lot of knowledge that you need to keep in your head. So enablement, first of all, is to make sure that all the CSMs, not only CSMs, also onboarding and everyone who also the support team, that everyone knows the things that they need to know within the actual product. So what that means, every 2 weeks, we have a product release. So we sit the whole team and I go through the product release with them and show them how to teach clients about it. So it's product knowledge. And then also every quarter, I do a self-assessment where they basically vote on the domains that they feel that they need help with. And then I take all that data and then I build out like a plan for the quarter where every month I try to people are very busy. So I try not to have too many sessions with them. So once a month, we do a session based on what the self-assessment was. So for example, a lot of people said that the waterfall is a bit complex for them. So I did a really thorough breakdown session of the waterfall. And then I also do a test because sometimes people can just sit in a session and stare at the ceiling. So I want to know that what I thought them actually went through. So I do a really short test on Google Forms, and then I can really see if people actually listen, if they got the information. And obviously you can see it also later on. Like for example, the specific waterfall feature that I mention a lot. My husband can't stop hearing about this waterfall word. Obviously, the way to really see it is to see if clients adopt it more. Obviously, the more knowledge the CSM has about a feature, the more they relay it to the client and the more client uses it. So we can see that over time, the usage of the waterfall feature has gone up because the CSMs feel more comfortable, they have more knowledge. So I would say that's the enablement part, but it's not only on the software itself. It's about everything, about how to do things in the system, how to work with other teams, how does the tax and bookkeeping service work, basically everything that they need to know. So I do sessions with them, and if needed, I also do one-on-ones and also the new product releases. I feel like I'm the person that needs to know things. So if I don't know something, then I go to the product and I ask them, or I go to the payments, the person who's in charge of payments, and I ask them. And I really want to make things accessible for the CSMs so they have all the knowledge that they need.
You mentioned that internally the team is structured between CS, onboarding, and support. Those are the three mini teams that stay under the CS organization. And I assume that you have internal processes because you mentioned about alignment between the three of them. I'm curious, how does the CS team interact with, for instance, the sales team? And what are the processes that you've built to have a smooth handover from sales to the CS organization overall, if it's CS onboarding, or how does it work? And sales on one hand, but also product. So I'm also curious about those two.
Sure. Yes. So sales and CS handoff, I'm sure this is something that's brought up with every company. So currently we basically have a Slack channel where we get all the information about the client. So again, utilizing AI, what we've built recently, which works really well, is with Avoma AI. So again, we need to utilize, like, sales has so much information about clients that up until now we didn't really get. We just got their meeting summary. And of course, as we said, not everybody works in the same way. Some salespeople are very thorough and they send you like a really good summary, and some people will just send you like 2 sentences. And we needed to do more digging on our own. With Ask Avoma, you can basically get a summary. You can ask a prompt and you can get a summary of the client and everything, their pain points, everything that has happened from the actual client, like from the transcripts of the sales calls, which is a bit more in depth than the salespeople. Up until now, it was good. We did get a summary, but here you can really you can just ask also whatever you want. What about their documents? What are they onboarding from? Did they have any deadlines? Like you can really, again, utilize things that have already been said by the client. So we now implemented the new process of using Ask Avoma and getting like as much information as possible about the clients. And then specifically, again, this is specific to our company. Maybe other companies do it a bit differently, but when a new client joins, they get also an onboarding specialist that helps them to onboard all their historical data, and they get a CSM. So that's where they need to work together, and we're all one team. We all sit together. We have lunch together. Like the fact that we have like different roles, we're still very much united. And we have also people transferring from onboarding to CS and the other way around. So they meet with the client, they work closely, they have weeklies and where they discuss their mutual clients. So I would say the handoff from sales right now is being enhanced by AI, and the work within the team is just, we definitely still work as one team with smaller teams within. We still have a CS all hands. We have weekly onboarding and CS meetings, and support also works closely with us, and we all sit together. Like when you sit together, work together all day, like you're still very much aligned.
And how's the relationship with the product team? How does product develop the product based on the CS feedback? Or how does it work? What's the process?
Yes, I'm sure this relationship is a complex relationship in every company. The product the product definitely, I will say, listens to our needs. We have a request board through Monday where we have an application where we input every request that the clients gives. And then we have also, as I said, because our product is quite complex, we have on the CS team, we have a domain expert that works closely with each product. So for example, we have the CRM. So we have on our team, the CS, someone who's an expert in the CRM, and they work closely with the product of the CRM. And if I need something, I'm like, hey, Yard, can you push this and this request? And then she meets with their product. So that's a good way, because as I said, like there's so much knowledge that you need to keep in your head. So we've really split it up in an equal way so that every CS who's a senior, who's been at the company for a few years and really has like knowledge, is coupled up with a product. So that's one way. If we have a lot of things in the CRM, we would go through our CS and they would work with the product. That's one way. The second way is through just product requests. And then for strategic clients, we have a different way of working where we have big clients that have a lot of requests. So we will usually just summarize them in a meeting, meet with the head of product and listen, hey, this and this client wants these requests. Can we push them? Let's say we do our part. We push these requests on product as much as we can. Of course, they have their own prioritization and they have a lot of other factors that we're not aware of. Also sales comes to them, and also a lot of other factors ask for product development. But I will say that specifically at Agora, like a lot of the product is built by client requests.
When do you see people expecting CS ops to fix things and it really can't? What are the things that you can't solve through the role that you have?
So yeah, as you said, everyone needs to work the same way, which usually they do, but sometimes like I feel like I'm like the sheriff of the CS, which like force them to do things like a product. Just for example, a product manager wants a list of clients that were interested in sending checks because right now they're working on the check feature. And then they send a message and nobody answers them. And then they're like, Hannah, why is nobody answering me? And then I need to go and start chasing the CS. So I do feel like sometimes like people everyone's very busy. Everyone has their own tasks. And then when you rely on other people, sometimes you need to activate them, like me to activate them, which I do usually. But in the end, I'm not like, I'm going to sit on someone's head and be like, why didn't you send the check? So I will say just like the collaboration in a company that's growing and everyone has like a lot of tasks all the time. So the internal prioritization of other people, I can't control. I try to help, I try to build processes, but in the end, everyone just works in the way that they work. but definitely trying to improve even that process. So for example, I feel like I'm like marketing Avoma here, but we've just been using it a lot lately. So for example, for these things, I told them, hey, why don't you ask Avoma who has been interested in checks? And then again, it looks through all the transcripts, and it can say these and these companies have mentioned that they'd like to send checks through Agora, and then they can get that data. So again, I try to take things off the CSM's plate by giving solutions also inside the CS and also to other teams like product, sales, marketing. So I would say those are things that I'm trying to help with.
You've seen CS from a few different angles. If I used one system or process you put in place, what would break first?
What would break first?
Yes. If we just, I don't know, let's pick a process that tomorrow you wouldn't have, what would break?
And okay, let me think about it. And I would say we have an early adoption process. So basically, after clients finish onboarding, they go into a stage called early adoption where they have training with the CSMs to use the system. The CSMs meet with them. Usually it'll be weekly, and they train them on the different domains. And then once the client has reached a health score that passes a certain threshold, then they move on to ongoing, because it basically tells us that the client has adopted the system, they're using it, and then they don't need specific training. They can just go on to use the system. So I would say if we stop doing that, it would hurt the adoption, because our product is very well made. There's a lot of domains, but it does sometimes need explaining, because each client has their own different use case. Like no two clients are the same. The way that they manage their investors and the way that they manage their investors is different. So the CSM really needs to meet them and be like, hey, you should do this and you should go about it this way. So I would say if there was no training process, we would see it in a decline of adoption of clients. So that's one of the processes I think works well. We monitor it. We're able to see who does trainings. Also, through Avoma, we have a scorecard with that basically, like, I put in some thresholds of what a training session should look like. For example, did the CSM mention the value of the feature? Did the CSM start with an opener? Did the CSM ask correct questions? Like all these things that should be in a training session. And then that's being monitored, and it gives an actual grade after the session. And then we can see that the training sessions work well. So I would say that's something that has worked well. And if we were to remove it, it would be unfortunate.
The last question is for CSM listening who's curious about moving into the CSOps one day. What practical skills should they start building now?
Wow, that's a good question. I feel like even when I started as a CSM and there were 4 people, I was always like doing things. Like anytime something needed to be done on top of my CSM work with all my clients, I would just do it. First of all, to just be a person that does things. Like of course you need to ask questions, what can be done, but like that's already will set you apart from a lot of other people. So anytime, even like small things, a presentation needs to be made because you're meeting with the CEO. So just do the presentation and come to your boss and be like, hey, I made this presentation for the meeting. Or something needs to be analyzed. Like someone asks, why did we have so many churns last month? And then you can look into it and use data. So if you can show that you're technical, so that you can use data, that you get shit done. Sorry, I don't know if you can curse. That you get things done, because that's people that usually get promoted. And I would also say there's a strategic element to my role. So as I said, like, how do we be more efficient? How do we reduce time that's wasted on things? Like really need to think of new processes. So if you can see something that's not working very well, and you can think to yourself, okay, if we only did this and this, we could improve it. If we only had more data, if we only change this process, if we only talk to sales and then actually do it, I think those are the ways to show that you have additional skills that could be used as CSOps.
Hana, thank you for the conversation. It was great hearing what CS operation really looks like in practice, and how do you think about building systems that actually support the team. And to everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and mastering customer success.
Thank you.